Donald Trump has signed an executive order about college football and NIL, but what does it all mean?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Turn us up, turn us on, we'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend Brian Smith from Locked On the Portal to talk about all the going-ons in college football, but specifically Trump's executive order on NIL. We're going to talk a little bit about offensive line recruiting and filling needs over just recruiting stars. Brian, I want to thank you for joining me today. Let's start at the top. Trump's executive order. A lot of people were confused by this. The president of the United States has weighed in on NIL, and he signed an order. Help us break it down. When I read it, it felt like an affirmation of a lot of stuff they already agreed to. I'm not sure how much this executive order did, but clarify this for us. What is this order, and what does it mean for college football?
It's very convoluted to me because you get into the lawyer talk, but the main points here are the following. They don't want pay for play, which, newsflash, the genie's out of the bottle there. And they don't want a bunch of players constantly driving up prices, etc. I think that's called the free market that we live in. So I don't know how much it's going to work, but they don't want the collectives just handing out money for certain schools and there being, quote unquote, a really wide gap, which there is right now. Like Ohio State lost, what was it, 33 million last year, but they didn't care because they won it. Yeah. And they make that money on the back end with boosters donating when they win it. So that number being in the red, a little different. But the bottom line is they want the collectives to have to go through that money they give out to go towards the house settlement. And I don't think that's going to happen. And then they backed off of that. Like they're going back and forth. But overall, if your deal for your name, image, and likeness with this NIL clearinghouse, it can get rebuked. We're waiting because it was on August 1st that all these deals were supposed to go in. And under Trump's executive order, your name, image, and likeness can get jammed up. There's going to be lawsuits. I don't know when the first one's going to be. Everybody, myself included, are really turning their attention in fall camps because, hey, football was here. Thank God for that, by the way. Want to throw that. I don't care who you root for. It was the end of July was rough. There wasn't much going on, brother. There wasn't much going on. But so the executive order is trying to level the playing field. I don't think it's going to work. And I think they're going to get sued a bunch because these NIL collectives are separate. They're going to do what they do. I just don't think it's going to work. But there's still some fine tuning, and don't be surprised if there's something else that he comes out with later. If some of these NIL deals get rebuked, they're really determined to try to keep it from ending up being players being employees, which we are trending in that direction. And the athletic departments definitively do not want that because they don't want workman's comp and all this other stuff down the road.
Yeah.
Football, it's coming whether they like it or not. It's just a matter of when, not if. But I think the executive order is interesting, and it'll be something that's probably talked about in sports journals for decades, but I don't think it's going to hold a lot of water. It's going to get sued by the collectives. It's going to get sued by players. It's sued by agents. It's really, really convoluted.
When they say they're trying to stop pay for play, it confuses me because that's exactly what we're doing, right? It is exactly pay for play.
Exactly. So, well, you're right. If the NCAA would have put out any kind of rule when NIL came out, anything, they failed so badly. They could have had something to stand on. It's too late. It's like you dropped the water bottle on the floor and you didn't put the cap on. Well, there's water all over your floor. It's just what'd you expect?
Well, the second part of what you said, the fair market value piece, where they're trying to determine what's fair market value for something. To me, it's fair market value is whatever someone's willing to pay for whatever it is they're willing to pay for. And who or is anyone else to come in and say, no, you shouldn't pay that much for that because you want to. If you want to pay that much for that, sure. It takes me back kind of like a Nico situation at Tennessee, Brian, where a lot of people were thanking Josh Heupel for essentially saying no to this deal with this quarterback, because it's like, thank you so much. Like, that's not a precedent that we want to set.
Exactly.
Where, he's a good QB, but was he worth $4 million? They were already paying him 2.5. He ended up getting less than that in California, and the market itself. The market corrected itself there, right? We didn't need an executive order for Josh Heupel to say, "Look, man, we're not doing that." He hit the market, and what he found was there wasn't anybody willing to pay $4 million for his services. So, I don't know. I just feel like the free market just corrects itself at times.
The only thing that I'll add to that, you're right about the players already on campus. The executive order, in my opinion, is more about recruiting, because you're banking on player, and pick one, getting a big deal and hitting. A lot of these schools, just use example, Texas, I know flat out they paid over $1 million for kids out of high school in this last class. That is the genie back in the bottle they're going to fail on, because there's certain schools that just have more money. It's always been that way, though, Mike. We both know that Texas got more money than TCU. Texas has got more money than most of the schools anywhere. You're not going to completely level the playing field. So kids that make over $1 million out of high school, they're usually quarterback, defensive tackle, offensive tackle. Those guys, the really key positions, they don't go to very many schools. If you look at the elite players, the 5-star kids, they go to about 10 to 15 schools, and we know who they are. That's always been the case, though. So leveling the playing field is a very subjective phrase, and in some ways the portal has helped. But that market's dried up because more people are paying players to stay, which I think is good to get more continuity. But now it's back to the high school thing. And if you found a way to get the NIL deals and the name, image, and likeness to stick in court, then it's just going to go back to under the table.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell some Texas booster not to pay. They want to win. They do not care. Same at Georgia, same at Ohio State, same at USC. They're going to buy kids. So, the executive order, I think, is a waste of time.
Look, it's going to have to all get sorted out at some point, but life goes on, and especially in recruiting, which is what I want to talk about next. We have talked a ton about the work that Scott Frost has to do along that offensive line in recruiting. What's out there? We'll talk with Brian Smith from the portal about what's out there in recruiting on offensive line right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Guys, summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights or golf on the green or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Beach is overrated anyway. I don't need a tan. I already got a tan built in. But look, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's FanDuel.com to get started today. America's #1 sportsbook. Get in the game with FanDuel. Offensive line recruiting. UCF has 2 tackle commits. That's probably not enough. 2 3-star commits along the line. But we've talked about this a lot. When it comes to the portal, there's usually not a ton out there in terms of offensive line, and the premium guys are getting snapped up by the bigger schools pretty quickly. And those guys with all the money. Talk to me about the state of offensive line recruiting in the portal specifically, and what's out there. This is a tall task, I think, for Scott Frost trying to build an offensive line here in today's college football.
Offensive line is probably the worst position in college football and to a certain degree pro football, It's really hard to play. It takes a long time to develop. It's hard to project guys because a lot of them are still developing when they're juniors and seniors. I mean, they're 280, 290 pounds. They still need to gain weight. It's hard. So if you miss, brother, it's a problem. So you can't do anything else. Just at least throw numbers at it. Teams that don't sign on average 4 offensive linemen a class over a 5-year period. I've already done the numbers on this, took a lot of research. By and large, those are the teams that end up not going to bowl games. You want to take 4 high school, keyword high school offensive linemen every single year. Over half of them are going to be busts. I don't care if you're Georgia. I mean, Georgia's offensive line sucked last year. It was bad. And they took 27 players going into this season over the last 5 classes. Georgia has signed more O-line than anybody. Not really shocking. It's an O-line driven program. It took 27 and it still didn't work out. That's how hard it is.
Yeah.
So that's number one. The second part of it is, like, if you look at the teams that are good, it's so random with the rankings. Like BYU does not sign a ton of elite offensive linemen. They've had some really good O-lines over the last 5-10 years. It's very difficult. UCF is one of those schools, but it's still numbers. For right now, since they're behind it and they don't have enough numbers in this class, I offer 2 things. Number one, obviously you got to try to flip somebody. And number 2, don't be afraid to use the junior college ranks. That's an extension of high school before you get to the portal. It's just like getting another transfer. Maybe some kid comes back home to Florida that's at a Mississippi JC, California JC, Texas, or Kansas. Those are the 4 states primarily. You need offensive linemen to get more competitive. And the same thing for D-line too. You're probably going to lose John Walker after this season one way or another, in my opinion. He'll either turn pro or look for a better opportunity. I don't think NIL is really that good at UCF. I think he will blow up this year. So that's on the other side of the ball. Same thing, same kind of thing. You need numbers, and you got to really look under every rock to figure it out.
Yeah. It's interesting. Offensive line, as you mentioned, very tough position in recruiting, but the JUCO ranks are kind of forgotten, Brian. Yeah. Once upon a time, before all this portal stuff, you could go to the JUCO ranks and get some really, really good players. And sometimes it was guys who maybe didn't have the grades to get in right out of high school. So they went the JUCO route, and then your coaches kept up with them. The academic advisors made sure that they could qualify academically, and then they would come into college already sort of developed physically and more ready for major college football.
Nothing wrong with that. A lot of guys. Well, Cam Newton ended up at the junior college ranks, won the Heisman, first pick in the draft. There's been a lot of different guys go through that level, and it worked out. Walter Jones, Florida State. He played 2 years at one of the Mississippi junior colleges. He's Hall of Famer, left tackle in the NFL for a long time. He was like all pro like 6 times. You can find big time players at the junior college ranks. If you just get one guy, think about it this way. UCF's going to play in a ton of close games in the Big 12. That's just that league in general.
Yeah.
If you've got one more offensive lineman that you can count on that gives your quarterback that extra half second to get that's wins and losses.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what else to say, but if you look at like Arizona State this last year, they had the rarest of the rare. They had a transfer portal O-line by and large, and it worked. That's hard. You cannot live by that. That is too hard. You need guys that are used to being around each other for years, not months, for it to work. So, but right now, UCF's got to piece it together and slowly build where they flip it. Fewer transfers, more high school kids, but that may not be the way they go from day one. And Scott Frost has taken over a program that I don't know if they'll win 6 games this year. It's going to be hard. And they're in a more competitive league than what they've been. So they need to really find a way to win in the trenches. That's the difference in the Big 12 at the upper level. Like Kansas State's O-line is always good.
Yeah.
They really focus on it. And they're my pick to win it this year too. Iowa State's O-line's pretty good. These trends, if you're going to win, you're going to have to follow it. That's my biggest concern. And I don't care if they get JUCO kids added in. I don't care if they take prep school kids, whatever. Like Notre Dame just took a prep school kid. He's a 5th-year guy up in one of the schools in Connecticut or something. If Notre Dame's willing to do it, you should be able to look at that too.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Look, you've got to develop and identify at a high level if you're Scott Frost, and that starts on the O-line. It takes me back to when NIL in its inception, the Texas had this organization called the Hearts for Horns, and they said if you commit to Texas as an O-lineman, we'll sign you to a $75,000 a year deal. And they signed the best O-line class in college football that year. And look at what they've done since. It starts and ends with the trenches. And for so long, I think that's been the difference between leagues like the SEC and everybody else is when you get to championship games, those SEC lines show up and dominate for so long, for years and years and years in the national title games, and the rest of college football trying to catch up. You see gimmicky offenses, kind of like what Oregon was running. Well, they get exposed when they get to the national title game, when their lines get run all over by teams like Ohio State, and Auburn did it, and they can't stop anybody, right? So it's very interesting to see. But look, when you're recruiting, there's an idea that you need to recruit high-level players, but you also need to fill needs. And we're going to talk about filling needs over recruiting stars next on Locked on UCF. Filling needs over just simply recruiting a bunch of stars. If you're Scott Frost, you've got to find the holes in this roster, and you've got to be very methodical about who and how you recruit to make sure that they're bolstering this roster and not just simply going after a player because they're highly rated. And quite frankly, highly rated players that they're probably not going to get, right? So you've got to hit the JUCO ranks. You've got to look at what you need, and you've got to be able to identify good talent that's maybe being overlooked by a lot of guys who aren't looking very deep. We just did an interview with a UCF recruit, and he talked about meeting Scott Frost, and it was pretty clear that he watched my tape very intimately. This kid was saying, like, look, man, this guy studied me, and from the time I met him, I could see that he was invested and not just trying to pitch me because I was a name on a sheet with 3 stars next to my name. Talk to me about filling needs over just simply recruiting highly rated players. I feel like that's how a lot of schools end up with these highly rated busts, because they don't do any real evaluations past, what's on the stars next to their name.
You got to know the family, the background, the off the field. Anytime I talk to a college coach or a recruiting guy in the back office or a 7-on-7 coach, high school coach, the conversation almost immediately does the same thing. What does this young man do off the field, and who are the people around him? So if you're a 4-star, but you're an idiot off the field, how much value are you to UCF?
Right.
If you're a 4-star and the family is going to be going into the coach's office asking for more money all the time, how much value are you? It's all off the field stuff. So the recruiting rankings are a little iffy. That you may be that good of a recruit, but I know flat out that the programs that win the most are the ones with the least attrition, like Clemson. They don't put up with that crap. You've got to find kids that want to be at your school beyond just playing football at UCF or fill in the blank. Those are the teams that win, and that's filling needs more than anything. The schools that recruit off these sheets, they're done. Those are the ones that will lose half their class within 2 years, and then they got gaping holes at positions like corner, defensive end, quarterback, and the coaching staffs get fired. Filling needs is knowing who you sign. And it's not just, he can play free safety or wide receiver or whatever. It's going to be a part of our community. It's going to be a part of our locker room, and you build a culture. Penn State, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame, some of these programs have been really successful in the last 10 years. That's what they do. And UCF did that when Frost was there the first time. He recruited kids that wanted to actually be there and take on the role. And guys who might have been recruited at one spot, they moved, but they wanted to be a part of it. They moved a linebacker to DN or whatever. You got to find those guys. So that's the biggest thing. Lastly, I'll say you've got to sign balanced classes positionally, even if that means like you sign 6 guys that are receivers or a few of them willing to play DB or vice versa. Versatility too, to help fill needs just positionally. Teams that like get just a whole bunch of guys at one spot, how much balance is there? A&M did that a few years ago. They signed like 1 or 2 linemen in that class. That's not how it works. They signed like 8 defensive linemen. You got to have some balance.
Yeah, it takes a lot of trust to commit to a coach, and then he comes up to you, Brian, and says, "We think you should switch positions when you've been playing a position your whole life." And I mean, I'm telling you, there's a lot of trust between a coach when you talk about switching positions. Guys who maybe came in thinking that they were college level QB, but might be better suited at wide receiver or tight end or something because they have that sort of athleticism. But it's hard mentally to get a guy to buy in to a switch like that, that not only is beneficial to the team, Brian, but to the athlete himself, because he has a chance to go on and play at the next level at a position where he can actually succeed. So, trusting somebody else's vision for your talent over your own vision is a dicey proposition for a lot of kids, but hopefully that is what Scott Frost is building down in at UCF, where kids are coming in and they, from what we're hearing, there is a lot of trust. Dante Carr, the quarterback, one of the 2 quarterback commits in this class, said they were very honest with me, Mike. He said, Mike, he said, look, you're not a P4 quarterback yet, but here's how we think you get there. Other schools wanted him to play linebacker and other positions. He said, no, I want to be a quarterback. He said, okay, you can be a quarterback, but here are all the things that you need to do better to make that happen. And it's going to be a ton of work and you're going to have to grind it out, brother, if you want to get there. And he said, okay, these guys were honest with me. I'm going to commit to the coach that was honest with me over the guy who's just trying to sell me a bill of goods to get me in the door and then might pull a switcheroo on me after I get there. So, I hear you, man. It is. Closing thoughts, man. How long does this process take for UCF, do you think, in terms of identifying talent and getting to a place where you can do both fill needs and recruit those highly rated players?
Minimum 3 years. This is year 1. I know fans don't want to hear any part of that, but football is a lot like federal government. It moves slow.
Yeah.
Even with the portal, and it's slowed down. Not as many good players are getting in the portal as they used to. A lot of guys do, but not good players. You have to be able to develop slowly with the high school kids. And again, as we mentioned, junior college players are fine as well. And they got to stick around. You got to pay players to stick around. Your coaches got to stick around. They got to know the system. And that's what Frost did the first time. They signed a lot of underrated kids from Florida, Georgia, etc. And, of course, you get McKenzie Milton out of Hawaii, which that's so random. And you end up winning big.
Yeah. Brian, I want to thank you for joining me today. Great conversation as always. Guys, that's it for another great edition of Locked on UCF, your number one source for UCF sports. Do us a favor. Go on over to audio. Go to your favorite podcast platform and hit that subscribe button, turn on automatic downloads. The audio helps us a ton. Also, we're on the race to 1,000 subscribers. We just have, as of we're recording this, we have just 44 subscribers to go to hit 1,000. We appreciate your support as we have grown super fast here at Locked on UCF, and that is thanks to the graciousness of our listeners. Do us a favor as well. Head on over to Locked on the Portal and subscribe to my guy, Brian. He's keeping you up to date on all the latest going-ons in college football with portal signings, everything that's happening. He's on top of it. We appreciate him for keeping us informed. We'll be back with more Locked on UCF tomorrow. That's it for today's show.